In the week since Halyna Hutchins tragically died after being accidentally shot from a prop gun mishap by Alec Baldwin while working on the set of his movie Rust, new details have emerged around labor practices on the Santa Fe, New Mexico production. Meg James of the LA Times reports that as recently as the weekend before the shooting, one cameraman complained to a production manager about gun safety while filming, and that just hours before the horrific shooting, some camera crew walked off the set in protest of working conditions, including complaints about long hours, long commutes, and waiting for their paychecks. The assistant director who handed Baldwin the loaded gun was fired from a movie in 2019 after a gun accident on set led to a crew member being injured.
Last week's incident comes only a month after members of IATSE authorized their first strike in the union's 128-year history. The camera crew that left the Rust set the morning before the shooting were, in fact, IATSE union members. They were replaced with a non-union crew. Joining us now to discuss is host of the Katie Halper Show and co-host of the podcast Useful Idiots. Katie, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So, Katie, what have you made of the latest Baldwin developments here?
Well, I think there's been a lot of effort to exonerate Baldwin, and Baldwin keeps saying that, he's fully cooperating, which is great. But the problem is that there was a lot of cutting of corners. And, it was actually the morning up, 6 hours before the fatal shooting, that workers walked off the set. They were threatened with they were threatened with security if they didn't leave voluntarily. Apparently, the victim was teary-eyed over the negotiations, or the lack of negotiations, I should say. And this really is about cutting corners. They weren't put up in Santa Fe. They had to drive an hour to get to the hotel. Apparently, most of the crew members got 5 hours of sleep. And this is just what happens when you literally put profits over people. Quite literally, right? And we see that sometimes the results are fatal. And now we have a woman who was killed, and her son is left without a mother. Her husband is now widowed. And, Halyna Hutchins is the person who paid the ultimate price. But this is something that's systemic and doesn't always result. Luckily doesn't always result in death, but it's just not acceptable for it to result in these inhumane working conditions either.
Yeah, Alec Baldwin obviously has been drawing a lot of the kind of attention, focal point, because he's a famous person. But I've been reading more and more details about the set's armorer, this Hannah Gutierrez Reed, who, the details are pretty, it's wild how much previous irresponsible use of firearms, safety practices involving her specifically, and previous productions she's been involved with, and now there is a lot of media reporting about it. But have you been following those details, and were you as shocked as I was?
Yeah, she's 24, which means that, they probably, if you're 24, you're obviously not as experienced. She had actually said on a podcast that she almost didn't accept the job because of a lack of experience. But also it means that you're not going to probably push back enough. You're not going to do anything to rock the boat when you're that young and you have a job like this. To me, though, one of the most shocking things to find out about this story is that just days before this fatal shooting, someone else had picked up a gun, was told it was a cold gun without ammunition. It was his stunt double, Alec Baldwin's stunt double, and fired actual shots. Like, the gun was not cold. The gun was loaded. And the fact that happened, how much more of a warning would you need? And a crew member actually texted a production manager that it was super unsafe. And they, the LA Times reviewed that text. And
firing a literal warning shot.
Right.
Yeah, a literal warning shot. It's one thing. It's just so irresponsible to, after that, not implement safety precautions. I also don't know why it's ever loaded with real ammunition.
There's that too. But then there's another detail about this 24-year-old armorer that is relevant to the discussion, and it's specific to Hollywood, but it's also a function in our society writ large, and that is that she's the daughter of a well-known Hollywood armorer. And so that is how she got her job. And that
it's like the Middle Ages. If your dad is a blacksmith, you're going to be a blacksmith.
Right. And
well,
you know,
the
this
problem is that if
no.
to continue that metaphor, right, would be like if your dad's a blacksmith, you're going to be a blacksmith, except with a lot of power and
perks.
If blacksmiths had perk, I mean, it's the nepotism angle, right?
Right.
That's the
or like a heart surgeon, like
perhaps.
Right. You're not going to. Well, my dad is a heart surgeon, and so you're going to be fine. Don't worry. It's like no. Like this, people's lives are on the line here. Separately, apparently, she or some other people were engaging in target practice, like on or nearby the set, which seems completely unnecessary. And so that apparently that's how live bullets wound up. Being near the set.
Disgusting.
There were many rounds of live bullets on the set, even though they said there weren't any. There were. The police found them. 500 rounds. 500 rounds.
Right. And Katie's point on top of that is a good one. That why are they even putting blanks in these guns at this point, given the CGI? But if you have some clown that's out doing target practice right next to the film set, even if your normal guns aren't loaded with anything, that could still lead to you swapping in a hot gun with a live bullet in it if you have hot guns right nearby.
Right. Maybe they just shouldn't be right nearby. I mean, maybe if she's young, and it's more of a systemic problem than this one person, right? And the problem is that she shouldn't have had that job in the first place, as she kind of had the foresight to say, but unfortunately she did take the job, even though she said she almost didn't. But, maybe if they had spent less time doing target practice, they could have put the safety precautions in. But again, this is really a top-down problem, and we shouldn't lose sight of that, right? This is to save money. All these corners were cut. You can see crew members complaining before this happened on Facebook. Obviously, they complained in text messages. Obviously, they were disturbed enough. Then they were replaced by non-union workers, right? That's another important thing. They walked off, and then the production replaced them with non-union workers. And imagine if they had actually responded to their safety concerns. I mean, there would be probably someone alive and not dead. And there would be someone who, a son would have his mother and a husband would have his wife. Right.
Then the financing firm that backed this film, that is their business model. They specialize in doing these cut rate, low budget films that they then hope to turn around at a profit. But Katie, thank you so much for joining us on Rising. And we will have more Rising right after this.